So do I think female and male percussionists lean towards certain instruments? Well, that's quite a broad question, and of course it varies throughout the world. If we think of territories such as South America, where very often it's the males who play the percussion and the females dance or sing. That happens quite a lot in African territories as well as the Far East and so on. But of course, things are always changing nowadays. And I think that, you know, as we share music and we have so many different wonderful collaborations, that I think barriers are coming down and male and females are singing, dancing, playing instruments and doing everything else. So, and I think that's a wonderful scenario to be in. In my situation, when I was growing up and starting percussion at the age of 12, there was only one boy in the school playing percussion and the rest were girls. But then when I became a full-time student at the Royal Academy of Music, I was the only girl and the rest were boys for a period of time. So, and I think as I've had the opportunity of traveling around the world, again, I see situations whereby, you know, some orchestras, for example, might be more male dominated. But having said that, I may, you know, happen to be with an orchestra whereby there's a really sort of healthy amount of female players in the percussion section. So it does vary, but I think that we all have the opportunity to learn whichever instruments we feel most comfortable with. Didn't really have the resources to, this is, you know, back in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, to, you know, find out about other players, believe it or not. And we did not have players come into school giving workshops or masterclasses and things like that. That simply just didn't happen. And so I think that really my kind of evolvement, and certainly with solo percussion, was something that was so new and it did not exist on a full-time basis before. So really my inspirational people were other instrumentalists such as Jacqueline Dupre, the wonderful cellist who died far too young. But she was a huge inspiration. I didn't actually meet her, but to see her perform and to see the passion and the connection she had with the music and how she just sort of spread the joy of music making to the general public, that had a big impact on me. And I think also I look towards other kinds of disciplines, such as, you know, sporting people, people in business, because obviously I had to think about the business of being a musician and the business of being a solo percussionist and how to negotiate through that pathway, really. So a lot of inspiring people came from that type of arena too. And I think it's important to really sort of, you know, look up, look down, look across, you know, all directions, because there are people all around us of all ages, of all backgrounds and disciplines and so on, that are really hugely inspirational in what we do. Have I ever heard an opinion whereby percussion and women cannot be combined? Heavens forbid, I don't even want to think about it. Well, actually, no. And I think possibly because, you know, I started percussion whereby both girls and boys, men and women and so on had the opportunity, an equal opportunity to learn percussion. But do bear in mind that, you know, I learned percussion here in the UK. Now, of course, this might have been a very different scenario in other territories of the world. So I can really only, you know, talk about it from my own perspective, my own experience. And certainly, you know, what I've experienced is that, you know, men and women, girls and boys have equal opportunity to engage with percussion playing. And I think this all-inclusiveness, no matter what your background is or what your experience is, percussion is open to us all. So why has this stereotype appeared, and is it true? Well, certainly in my case, you know, I hadn't experienced any kind of barriers for girls or boys, men or women. And so just really to clarify, that's my own experience. But I have obviously been to places such as Brazil, whereby, you know, most of the dancing is done by women, and really 99.9% of the playing of instruments is done by men. And I remember taking part in the Rio Carnival and being in that amazing spectacle, and I was, I think, possibly the only woman playing an instrument there. So really quite interesting, and certainly I've noticed that a lot in the likes of Africa or in certain places in the Far East and so on. But at the end of the day, you know, every instrument is capable of producing masculine sounds, feminine sounds, and, you know, we have to delve into all of those things. And, you know, music's a very sensual thing as well, and it taps into all sorts of emotions, and emotions that we all as a human race can relate to. And I think that's why we say music is a universal language. And if you can imagine a spoken word being sometimes a barrier, but you bring a drum and you bring people together, you bring sounds together, you then bring that connection together, that bridge that you're creating, really. So it's just really good to know that we can all sort of share the experience of sound creation and know that we will always be able to communicate with each other. Do I feel image plays a part in what I do as a performer? Yes and no, actually. I think that I remember really thinking quite hard about the costumes I would wear for playing certain pieces of music. So, for example, when I played UFO by Michael Doherty, I had a silver outfit made, or if I played Tan Dun's Water Percussion Concerto, then getting an outfit that would, you know, cope with being splashed with water or whatever it might have been. And that was all really interesting to explore. But ultimately, you have to listen to yourself, you know, what suits you, and you know, how do you want to portray yourself, and also what's practical and comfortable. So for me to wear a frilly dress, you know, if I'm playing a multi-percussion piece and have to dash from one station to the next, you know, that's simply impractical. However, I like the idea and have done, you know, playing a snare drum solo with a long pencil slim dress or something, and that's quite an interesting image. So it's really up to the individual, and even now, you know, as a player who's been in the profession a long time, I found that my style has changed, but it's changed very naturally according to how I feel and how I move as a player in the times that I'm doing this right now. So yeah, just listen to yourself. Did I ever feel pressure from the industry to look a certain way or to have a certain image? Certainly in the initial stages, when I first started having an invitation to record and make my first solo recording, certainly the record company wanted a certain image, and that didn't sit well with me. And I had to really, you know, think hard about that and really take control of that early on and put my mark down as regards to, you know, how I wanted to portray myself and what felt natural and right for me. So provided the lines of communication with the people that you're working with are good, then I feel it's very important to be transparent and clear as to what feels right for you. I think certain territories of the world that I played in my early career, that was also the case where, you know, a certain image for a female player was addressed, and again I had to think, you know, who am I, you know, what am I, and how do I want to be, and what feels natural for me. So it's almost as though I've got this tattooed on my forehead, you know, repeating myself in a way, but it is so important, it really is, because you have to stand your ground and you have to be honest with yourself and honest with other people. Well, I think the process of auditioning for orchestras now is so much more fair. And you know, when we have the blind auditions with the screen, you know, you're simply listening to the experience of the player, and that's what's important. And I think that really we've seen such a huge difference in orchestras, and you know, in the proportion of the players being male or female. And of course there are certain sections such as brass, the brass sections, whereby they can often be more male dominated, but at least we know that the audition process is far more fair, and that's a good thing.